Magdi?
Yes, hello, Esther.
I have earplugs on today, so maybe it'll help.
Yes, it seems to be helping. I don't hear any echo.
Yeah. I'd like you to speak to my experience. There seems to be a discrepancy in a very strong attraction to the truth and the words of truth, and drawn to that, to the truth. And my 24/7 experience and living, perhaps it's like you mentioned, the personal I is like a hum below the surface, and there is a pattern of judgment of what's arising, whatever rises. It's not too difficult to stay on the edge of awareness and inquiring. But at the same time, there seems to be such a discrepancy still between my attraction for the truth and a certain unease in my my life. So maybe just speak to that discrepancy.
Mm-hmm. So the unease that we experience relates to a person. There are certain subtle expectations or certain conditions or a certain scenario or certain images that we have, and these conditions create a sense of separation from simple being, simple resting. So there is an imagined state or an imagined experience or an imagined goal that is basically mentation, it's thoughts. And there is a sense of a personal goal or a personal experience, a certain set of images, a bundle of images that somehow we still cherish, beliefs that we still are still maintained, and they interfere with what is. They interfere with our natural beingness as restful, transparent beingness that has no personal agenda, no personal expectations, that it has no images, or does not believe in the images. It's actually beyond believing in the images. It's really being free of images. But we have to see the process that separates us, the process being an imaginary personal self with imaginary goals and imaginary experience. So from that separate self perspective, we look at the senses and we look at the world, body, mind to assess how we are doing. So we're affected by the weather. If it's sunny, we're very happy. If it's rainy and snowy and thunderstormy, we're not that happy, because we're still relying on the senses to determine our well-being and to sort of take the pulse of what we are and how we are doing. In fact, consciousness is complete freedom from world, body, mind. It's not trying to get a better dream or trying to get a better body or a better world. It's completely free of such things. So your love for truth, your love for truth challenges the old beliefs and the feeling and the images and this all the mental scenario that exist, because love for truth cuts through all these illusory images. So it's a matter of moment by moment turning your attention to pure presence right now, moment by moment turning your attention to the reality of right now, the reality of consciousness right now. It's not about thought or about images or about a future state. There is no future state. Simply noticing in this very moment the ease of being, the freedom of being, the transparency of being, that truly perceives in this very moment is complete transparency, edgeless awareness, recognizing in this very moment that that is I, that this transparent awareness, this transparent presence is this I. And that has nothing to do with any state, and it has nothing to do with time or any experience. So there is a recognition. Yeah, I'll be right there, Zoe, in a minute. So there is a recognition of the self in this moment. So your love for truth is actualized whenever you turn your attention to the self. So it's a theoretical love for truth, a potential love for truth in potential that gets actualized whenever you turn your attention to the reality, this transparency of being right now, that is the true, the absolute perceiver that has no name and no age, no gender. That is I. Recognition of the true I is the actualization of your love for truth. And it is not a recognition in time, it is a recognition in the eternity of consciousness, in this very eternal self right now. So when the weather is stormy, the problem is not with the weather being stormy, but with desiring things to be otherwise, desiring the weather to be otherwise. In desiring the weather to be otherwise, you are overlooking the self. You are overlooking that you are the dreamer of this dream. And you are mistaking yourself to be a bundle of personal desires. The belief in personal self your inquiry needs to be challenged. On what basis do you believe that the reality that is the reality of consciousness is born with the body and dies with the body? On what basis do you accept the premise that the reality of consciousness is subject to the laws of the body-mind, the laws of birth and death, decay? You do not have such an experience. You do not have an experience of the aging or the decay of consciousness. Know yourself. Keep returning to yourself. You are that. It's available to you to go to your true self. So if the old self is arising, the old stories and images and feelings and thoughts about me, a person in time, that's arising, you don't need to embrace such beliefs and embrace such feelings, meaning you don't need to actually be prey to such thoughts. You could return to yourself. You are the self. You can go right to yourself. What am I truly? In this question, the mind comes to total stillness because the mind cannot answer this question. There is a stillness of the mind in this question. All stories relate to that is not a story. All the letters in the book relate to the empty page. The images on the screen relate to the screen. But when the separate self thought arises and says, oh, I am still feeling separation, it invites you to spin into thinking about you as a character in the dream. It's telling you, hey, come, let's think about how good or how bad you're doing. But the you is not the real you. The you in the thought that says you're doing good or you're doing bad or you're doing better, that you, that self in that thought is not the reality that perceives, is not the real I, is not the true I. It's a charlatan. And what believes that is no one that believes that. It's just a subsequent thought. There's a subsequent thought that arises that says, yeah, I was doing better last week. And there is no one that actually believes that. It's just a subsequent thought that says, well, I should redouble my efforts. But what's beautiful about awareness is complete transparency. It can perceive that, it can perceive thoughts, and it can recognize the object of its perception and the subject that is the self, that is itself. So you are imbued with self-recognition. There is, within the self, there is self-recognition. Not just the recognition of world, body, mind, but self-recognition. So you can recognize the charlatan, and you can recognize the reality of consciousness. And that recognition is available to you. It's God's gift from itself to itself. You follow?
Yes, Magdi, thank you very much. Thank you. It's a moment by moment experience.
It's a trusting the not knowing. Returning to the not knowing, which is the all-knowing. The not knowing of the mind is the all-knowingness of the vastness of being. The dreamer knows all its dreams. So the dream character in the dream, somehow it's a magical dream, realizes that in fact the dreams of the dream character, as well as the dream character that the dream character takes itself to be, are just the dreams of the true dreamer. And in that instant, it releases its entire dreams as well as its very self, its very sense of self, releases all of that to the true dreamer. That is the not knowingness. The surrender, the complete surrender. And the true dreamer is all-knowing. Consciousness is all-knowing. Dreams, all dreams. Without any opposition. There is no opposition to consciousness, as it is the absolute reality. Everything that you experience within yourself as your very dream. Like all your night dreams are contained within you. Similarly, your waking dreams are contained within you. You not being a dream character, you being the absolute self.
Thank you, Magdi.
So Zoe, I thought there was a question from you. Let me see if I can find it. Let me see. Let me see. Okay. So, Zoe, you're right. Could you discuss more the teacher's role in bringing heart into self-inquiry so it isn't dry? So the self, the teacher is the self. You could say it's the self that is realized, appearing in the dream as a form, but in fact it is formless. The self appears as a teacher, but it's the formless self. It remains as the self, as the universal aware presence, as the one reality. So God's truth or God's grace or God's light appearing as a teacher, as a body mind. That is that the student can rub elbows with the teacher, can get close to the teacher, interact with the teacher as a friend. And in that process, there are quite a few dimensions to the interaction. The core dimension is the heart dimension, meaning the silent transmission, the silent knowingness, the silent wholeness, the recognition of the oneness and the transparency of being is a silent handshake, you could say, that is recognized by the student as feeling a certain affinity, a certain friendship, a certain being touched, at the heart level, being touched, feeling drawn, sort of magnetically in a way. Not just through the words, but through what's coming through the words, which is the stillness and the peace, the causeless happiness of being is felt at the heart level and draws the student to it, because the student is the self, is also the self that is being drawn to itself. It is like they say, the prodigal son that's returning to the castle. The prodigal son is from the royal family, is coming to the king's castle, the king and the queen's castle, but he's already, or she's already royal family. In spite of having believed themselves to be a peasant or to be a member of the other family, it nonetheless it is royal. It is from the royal family. So the student is the self and is drawn to the self and recognizes within their own heart, which is the self, the one heart, recognizes itself, recognizes itself and is drawn to itself. Like a child in the crowd. Sometimes a child loses its mother's hand and is a crowd and is feeling a despair, but from the distance it perceives its mother, and at that moment there is a peace in their heart, there is a happiness in their heart, and they run whichever way they can to be reunited with their mother. There's a recognition. Now in the teaching, in the interaction with the teacher, there is the Dharma is being expounded. The Dharma is being shared, and it's being shared via the invitation to a higher reasoning, to a higher understanding that sets the mind, realigns the mind according to the truth, and collapses the ignorance, the false beliefs from the mind, and brings the mind to a certain peace. And at the same time in the teaching, the body also relaxes and feels freed and relaxed just in the presence of the teaching and via the guidance of the self, via the guidance of the teacher. Also, in the vicinity of the teacher, the student will find similar friends, a sangha, that also are travelers along the path. They're also the prodigal family, the prodigal children, with whom the student can interact and befriend the sangha and celebrate the journey and celebrate their true nature as the recognition of what they truly are, that they are in fact a royal family, keeps deepening and keeps ripening. So in the sangha, you will find a friendship, and you will find also a certain teaching and an opportunity to live the teaching in interacting with others. So the teaching is a combination of love and wisdom, of bhakti and jnana. It's a combination of, it's not sufficient for the bhakti path to be without the jnana, and it's not sufficient for the jnana to be without the bhakti. They both meet together in the in making the teaching whole and complete. So when the teacher notices that the student is too deeply into bhakti, they will pull them into jnana. And when they will notice that the student is too deeply into the jnana, they will pull them into the bhakti. And the teacher, or the realized self, is the embodiment of truth and is both wisdom and love. Wisdom without love, or love without wisdom, is not the perfect marriage. Perfect marriage is love and wisdom.
Hi, Maggie.
Ananda, yes.
I'm in unusual circumstances. I'm in a little alley outside a cafe.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I can.
Okay,
Yes.
great. So what I'm curious about is, what is the felt experience when consciousness is the only thing acting, and the me impression or the me sense isn't really even a player?
Yeah. So the felt sense is peace and happiness, Ananda. Causeless peace and happiness. The when it's needed, there is wisdom being shared. When it's needed, there is the shining light of being, the love, the heart dimension that is felt. So the white light shines as the colors, the entire spectrum of colors of the rainbow. But the white light is peace and happiness, causeless peace and happiness.
Mm-hmm.
But then it can radiate the entire spectrum of colors, like the white light when it hits the prism. It can diffract in the infinite spectrum of colors. But in the diffraction of the light through the prism, in the metaphor that I'm using, the diffraction serves to it draws you to the contemplation and to the celebration of the self.
Mm-hmm. As opposed to being a attractive tinkling tinsel
As
that
opposed
wants
to,
your...
yes, as opposed to having any personal, as opposed to having any personal quality or inviting a personal quality to manifest. It invites you to the recognition of your wholeness, your vastness, your transparency, and your universality. So the experience of the self in terms of the Sahaja Samadhi is peace and happiness. At the body level, it's a transparency, is a complete merging. There are no more objects. The entire objective realm dissolves into the self. There is just the self, just the self shining, being transparent as the body, being infinite wisdom. The wisdom is just the wisdom of God's wisdom. It's not a personal wisdom. Just somehow it's God speaks. It's God's wisdom that speaks seemingly through a body mind. But from the experience from the Sahaja Samadhi experience, the Rishi no longer experiences a person, no longer experiences a body mind, as the center has dissolved, and the borders have expanded to the infinite, to the infinite, the borderlessness.
When you say the center has dissolved, you mean the center of a me impression, basically?
Yes.
The center of a someone?
Yes.
Is there a sense of a center as the divine, or
no.
a center? No center?
No. It's a center, you could say, but that's located everywhere and nowhere. So it's not a center like in the conventional geometric sense. It's a centerless center. I mean, it's a center, but it's
everywhere.
Right. So it's probably easier to say, no, there is no center.
How about the heart? It's so often, even Ramana talks about the heart center, like, not that
the heart,
if pressed, of course, he says it's not a place.
The heart center is also the universal center that has no center. The heart center is a borderless heart that has no personal center, or it has infinite and infinite to the infinite power centers. So it is a centerless center, and yet it's a center that's everywhere. So it's everywhere and nowhere. But yet, just to before I say any more about that, before the full revelation of the self, the dropping of the mind into the heart is an important invitation. And there are many traditions that use as a practice certain meditations upon a heart center located somewhere in the body, at the right side, at the center, etc. In certain cases, this practice is very helpful, but there is nothing more helpful than the direct path, to go directly through the entire chakric realm to the Atman, to Brahman, to God's light, in instantaneous recognition of the self. And so the teaching is always, and first of all, the direct teaching. And when the direct teaching requires some props, then certain props are introduced to get you closer to the direct understanding. But in terms of your question about the heart, there is only one absolute reality, and you can call it heart, and it is no different from self. In that,
I think Ramana says, I think in poetry he says, "Heart is thy name." Heart is thy name, O Lord, or something like that.
Yes, yes, heart is thy name. I go by all names and no names. Yes, heart is my name. Life is my name. Self is my name.
It's like when you said it's centerless, but it has infinite centers. I think maybe you said.
Yes.
I'm thinking so the heart might be kind of where it, kind of where that beaming, vibratory something of self into some kind of a form, maybe is where it is most easily felt, or something like that.
Yeah.
Not to make a big deal.
Right. It's hard to conceive of, because conception occurs in time and space, in thought. See, how would you conceive of the heart outside of thought?
Like the infinite heart and the
How would you
even beyond space?
How would you absolutely? How would you perceive that is beyond time and space?
Satsang.
Without the mind, yes. Yes. So,
sorry.
It can be spoken of figuratively, metaphorically, but it can only be known as what you truly are. And you are that. You are that vastness of being. You are that reality. And that reality, what truly perceives, is not in any phenomenal, mental, or worldly, or conceptual realm. It is realmless. And the I, the true self, the I, the reality that truly perceives in this very moment, that I am that. That is the I am. That is not perceivable, but yet it is the absolute perceiver. And it knows itself. How does it know itself? It knows itself directly in recognizing its own beingness. So you recognize your own beingness in this very moment as that wondrous, aware presence. That recognizes its reality and its wholeness in this very moment. Like the ocean knows itself. It's like the Buddha sleeping. I think there are some paintings or sculptures of the sleeping Buddha. It's sort of lying on the
also
side.
His student Ananda, who lies down and rests, and then awakens at that moment.
Oh, if you
that's a story, a Buddhist story.
If you do see that story or that painting or architect or sculpture, send it to me. I'd like to see it.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, if
it's not actually Buddha; it's Ananda, his student.
Okay.
And he tries to recognize the reality, and finally he says, I've got to just rest.
Oh, good.
And
yes.
Then he awakens.
Yes. There is a Zen koan, where a student comes to the teacher, ask him, tell me what is the truth, tell me what is the truth, what is the truth? And the teacher tells him, okay, go wash the dishes. And then comes asking, what is the truth? And then, okay, go now stir the soup. And so on. Spends many years like that with the teacher and gets very frustrated. So one night he comes to him in the meditation hall. It was very dark, and he comes with a candle and comes to the teacher and tells him, what is the truth? Tell me what is the truth. And the teacher tells him, just go back to your quarters, you know. And as a student is going to his quarter using the candle light, the teacher blows a candle. And in that moment, the student awakens.
I can see
it's a
something there.
Yeah.
It's like it
holding on to the candle.
Yeah, I can see it's a good story.
Somehow it arose.
So it's a beautiful place out here in Shasta. It's absolutely gorgeous.
Beautiful.
I hope we'll have time to go up on the mountain. Yeah. It's just 20 minutes from the retreat center.
Yeah, that would be lovely.
And Ted will take us on some walks. It's just fantastic.
Okay, we'll see how we go. Looking forward to being there. That's in August 3rd. Yes, looking forward to it.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Okay, Ananda.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Hi, Matthew. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hello, Holly.
Hi.
Hey, Holly.
So, I think it's becoming increasingly clear to me that the past is just a concept and the future is just a concept. Can anything be said more about the present? Do we also tend to conceptualize the present? Is there a reality to the present? I mean, I would assume there is some reality to the present, but yeah, just if there is no past and no future, what is the present?
Yes, Holly. So, can you look at that question right now in terms of what is the reality of the present right now? I think maybe the sound is from traffic around Ananda or the wind around Ananda.
Let me see. I thought I turned. Are you hearing me?
Yes, I hear you. We hear you.
Oh, I thought I turned my.
Oh, okay. That's yeah. So, Holly. So, what in your experience right now? What is the reality of the present?
I can feel sensations and I'm aware of the happenings, whether that's thoughts or sounds. And I also have some awareness of the changeless.
Okay, so there are some perceptions, sensations, and an awareness of the changeless. So just let's go to the perceptions and sensations for now.
Yeah.
What is the reality of the perception or the sensation in your experience right now in the present? So you're asking yourself, okay, there is a perception,
Yeah.
and you ask yourself, what is its reality?
I mean, I can feel it. I can see it's changing.
Yes, the perception is changing,
Yeah.
which is very interesting, because then you realize, okay, I just asked myself, what is the reality of this perception? And now it's a different perception.
Yeah.
The previous perception, quotes unquote, is just some image. There's actually no previous perception, because now it's just this perception. So the perception keeps changing. In other words, is the reality of the perception cannot be the perception itself, because it keeps changing. I don't know, maybe I'm leading you a little bit but it's a good question to ask yourself, what is the reality of the perception?
Yeah.
Because it's not nothing, it's something. But the question is, what is its reality?
Right.
And there is nobody that can tell you its reality, because outside of yourself, you are there. So you can look at that question and come to your own conclusion. So as you look at this question, what is your conclusion?
Well, as I've been looking at it a little bit, and so far it just feels like the closer I look, the lighter the present moment feels.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, as we were saying, just because because it feels constantly changing.
Right.
It feels very. At the moment, it feels almost like a thin film that's
right.
just very barely there.
Right. That's interesting. It's an interesting observation. It starts from being so real and opaque, and once you look at what is its reality, it starts becoming thinner and thinner.
Yeah.
It's funny, isn't it?
Yeah.
But the question still is, okay, it's getting thinner and thinner, but there's still a reality. It's, even if a very faint film is appearing, the question still is, what is the reality of this moment? It's a good question.
I mean, I think it must be the unchanging then. I feel like I'm saying that a little bit mentally right at the moment, but
I got you. You understand? Well, I mean, in a way, the mental is part of, the toolbox. In our toolbox, we have a lot of tools, and one of them is the reasoning. I mean, it makes sense in reasoning, even though it's mental, to say, well, okay, it's got to be something unchanging, because the image keeps changing, the perception changes. So the question is, what is the reality of this moment? It draws us to, okay, makes sense that reality isn't changing. Right? I mean, does it make sense to you?
yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. Somehow we're endowed with that tool in our toolbox, which is that some things, they higher reasoning, the reason when we think about them, because yes, we cannot deny that.
Yeah.
Okay. So it makes sense that the reality of this experience, whatever it is, can't be something that's constantly changing. It's got to be something that's not changing. And it cannot be that there is no reality, because there is nothing, there is something. Whatever is not what appears, because what appears keeps changing, but still there is something that apperceives what appears. And it makes sense that it's not changing. Then I ask myself, well, what is it that's not changing? See, it's at that moment the mind becomes silent. But although the mind is silent, presence is, there is I am, there is. Maybe I would venture to say it's like a wordless answer that comes to us, a non-verbal knowingness, a non-verbal answer. Does it make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
And because we are in satsang on the internet, we speak and say, okay, well, there is something that's unchanging. We can refer to it as presence, as awareness, as consciousness, as I. But it's a non-verbal absolute knowingness that goes by. You can name it anything or you name it nothing, but it is the reality. It is a reality that perceives. You follow?
Yeah.
So we started with your question: what is the reality of this present moment? Right.
Right.
Was something like that. What is the reality of now, or something like that?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So when we look at that question, somehow the question leads us to the reality of consciousness, of awareness, which we refer to as the self with a capital S, or the I. You follow?
Yeah.
And then when we just, let's say, hang out for a moment with this reality, this in this moment, we find that it doesn't have an age or a size or a form, or it doesn't have a story.
Yeah.
Which means it doesn't have a history, because stories and histories are connected, right?
Right.
So we come to like to this silent presence with an inner knowingness that it has no story, has no age, no form, and no beginning and no end, because beginnings and ends require time, requires a story, requires thought. You follow?
Yeah.
Which is another word for eternity. Sometimes you use the word eternity, but I don't mean eternity in terms of a long time. I mean eternity in terms of no time, or I don't know, absolute time, if you want to use that word, absolute time, or absolute timelessness.
You know, I when I'm observing the present, it feels so much easier to apply what you're saying to sensations. The thoughts feel more subtle,
Yes.
It seems like many more of them slip through the crack without me realizing that the identification process is happening.
With the thoughts,
Yeah.
the identification slips through the cracks. You're saying.
Yeah.
Well, let's look at it right now. Is it happening right now? You can just sense that right now.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Okay, so how are you experiencing that? This identification, like slipping through the crack here.
Yeah.
Can you describe? Can you say something about?
Yeah, I'm experiencing, like, when you're talking about stories and stuff, I'm experiencing myself as this person going through this process, trying to awaken to truth, and I never, I'll whatever, like maybe I'll never get it. I mean,
Right.
I
No.
start to.
So it sounds like you're describing from what I'm hearing that there are thoughts that are rising to you.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a fact. It's happening. Our thoughts are rising to you about me. I'm trying to get it, and maybe I'll get it or whatever.
Yeah.
Now, so in this very moment, where are these thoughts right now? Can you find them?
No. Not really. I mean, when they're very clearly worded, I feel almost like I can see them happening, but
Yeah. Right. I got you. But like in this very moment, right now, what's happening?
some thoughts are arising, some sensations are arising.
Okay. So our thoughts and sensations arising right now.
Yeah.
And it's possible for us, to ask again, what is the reality of this thought? What is the reality of this this sensation, right?
Yeah.
So that question is available to us to pause if we recollect to pose that question. Okay, find our thoughts and sensations. What is the reality? So you can go directly to awareness, right? To consciousness, to the screen that perceives, right?
Right.
Because there is a script arising on the screen, thoughts, sensations. But also we can ask ourselves, well, what is the reality? Which is just, it makes sense to ask this question because we're interested in reality, because what's the point of being interested in stories? I mean, there's nothing, I'm not opposed to stories, but I'm saying stories are stories. There are 10 million books in the libraries, and they're all different stories and novels and stories, right?
Right.
And if you go into one household with 10 people, and you will find for every person has 100 stories times 10 people, that's 1,000 stories in one room. It's only 10 people. So we're not interested so much in stories for now, because we're in satsang. We're interested in what's the reality.
Yeah.
So I asked myself that question. Okay, fine. I hear all these stories, these thoughts, and the spinning about, how is she doing? She's in satsang, blah, blah, whatever.
Yeah.
So I can ask myself, what is the reality? Right?
Right.
Which brings me to what?
That the thoughts are changing, and just like the sensations are changing.
And what's the reality of those changing sensations and changing perceptions?
So the reality is the awareness.
Yes. Yes. Nameless, transparent. Silent, still. So whenever we go to the awareness, it's like a magic wand. It's like all the stories they dissolved in that moment.
Yeah.
And at the same time, there is peace and tranquility. There isn't the worries that come with stories about me,
Mm-hmm. And eventually the link gets weaker between thoughts and emotions.
Yes, because
Yeah.
the reality of consciousness becomes more and more it resonates more and more. It's more. That's what's really beautiful about the contemplation of what is the reality of my experience is that you come to awareness and you get the bliss of the self, the peace at that moment, this moment of presence. You experience the peace, you experience the causeless happiness, right?
Right.
The stillness, the inner tranquility. You don't need to figure anything out.
Yeah.
And so that's peace, right?
Yeah.
And when we experience peace, it leaves an impact. There is an impact. We don't need to understand the impact, but there is an imprint. That's why it's encouraged for truth seekers to be around a teacher, not for the popularity or anything like that. It's to experience the bliss of the self, and at some point, you're free of the teacher. You can because you are the self. You can experience the bliss of the self. Yeah. But for a certain period of time, you may need to visit over and over awareness, consciousness that you are. It's really available to you. It's amazing. We spent 8 minutes together, or whatever it is, 10 minutes together, and you can, in those 10 minutes, you can come to the experience of the reality of consciousness, the peace. Right. So to visit consciousness, to do this exercise of the contemplation of the reality of your experience, delivers for you the taste of the peace, the causeless happiness of the self.
Yeah.
And it does something. It leaves an imprint, and it weakens the structure, and it opens the path for you. In time, this becomes more and more your recognition. There is an silent inner recognition. You're not even thinking about it; it's just shining.
Yeah.
And there is activity. You cook a meal, you drive the car to work, whatever. But it doesn't disturb. The images don't disturb the screen. Once the screen is self-knowing, the images don't disturb the screen. And if the images disturb the screen, be watchful not to add to it the judgment. Don't judge yourself. You can feel the disturbance. It's also one way of working with it. There are many ways of working in our contemplation. One of the ways is also to allow, to surrender. Surrender. If you're experiencing something, just allow it, experience it. Yeah. And at the same time, you can ask yourself, what is it that's truly experiencing that? What is it that is real in this moment? So that there is both the surrender, so you're not arguing, with your feelings and with your thoughts. You're saying, okay, fine, I can feel this. And at the same time, there is the inquiry to what is it that's real in this moment? What the heck? I'm interested in reality. What is it that's real? Okay, I'm not denying the feelings. Fine, I'm feeling this and that and that and that, whatever. Now, what is the reality of this script? And thought sometimes, okay, when you ask the question, what is the reality of this experience? And thought will start to spin, say, oh, the reality is. Thought will try to hijack the question.
Yeah.
But thought cannot give you an answer because thought is constantly changing. How can you get an answer that's keep changing every second or every 3 seconds? It will make you, when we were kids, we used to turn around in circle, you play in circle and circle, and then you stop and you don't know how to, what your balance is. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
We love to play like that.
What the mind is doing, huh?
Yes. Yeah. It's like you don't know your balance. There are so many metaphors. It's amazing how many metaphors there are about consciousness and this waking dream and the reality of the self. So be watchful with thoughts because they'll take you, they'll take you spin. And they'll promise you, they'll promise you whatever. They make all sorts of promises.
And ultimately, those difficult emotions and things are coming up as a help, right?
Yeah. It's like the emotions always refer to me. I, jealousy, anger, boredom, depression refer to me, a person.
Yeah.
You see, the more I am traveling along the me path, it's my life, my person, my future, my enlightenment, the deeper I go into the woods, the darker it gets. The deeper I go into the tunnel, the darker it gets.
Yeah.
And the reason why it gets darker is because we are moving in the wrong direction. And the darkness is reminding us, the sooner we get it, the better off we are, that we may need to stop. We may be going in the wrong direction.
Mm.
So in a way, negative emotions, suffering and all the negative emotions, they're like a signal for us. Wait, stop a minute here. Okay, we need to stop and examine. The key question is, what is the root cause of unhappiness? Because negative emotions is unhappiness. What is the root cause of unhappiness? What is the root cause? So we don't know. We don't know. But we're interested in the question.
Yeah.
We want to know what is it? Is there such a thing as an end to these negative emotions? Is it possible? Well, in my experience, I would say it's generically, oh no, it's not possible. It's not possible.
Right.
So we take the question further. Thank goodness we have the Dharma, the teaching. We take the question further. Who is suffering? What does the suffering refer to? It refers to me. I'm suffering.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm not going to deny that I'm suffering. What is the reality of this I that is suffering? I am not denying the suffering. I'm still suffering, okay? But I'm also, alongside my suffering, I'm asking myself the question. What is it that truly suffers? What is the reality of that suffers? What is its reality? Meaning, what is the reality of me, of I? Well, I don't know. I don't know what is my reality. I don't know. I just know that I'm suffering, and I know that I'm suffering, but I don't know what is the reality of that, of the I. But I'm interested in the question. I keep the question open.
Yeah.
The mind will say, I don't know. What the heck? What are you doing? Asking these crazy questions. I remember going to my mother when I was 13 or whatever it was. And she told me, what are these questions, Magdi? I said, I don't know. I mean, I'm interested. But she told me to forget these questions. So the mind will tell you whatever it'll tell you.
Mm-hmm.
But because we suffered enough, we're not going to listen to the mind that says forget it. We're just going to say, okay, well, fine. The mind doesn't know. Like I said, my mother doesn't know. It was at the time I was like, wow. My mother, who I thought, you know how we kids, like, they think their parents, well, at least I thought they were like very knowledgeable. In fact, she didn't know. And I knew that she didn't know. So we know the mind doesn't know. Say, okay, fine. What would know? See? So we keep the question alive. It's important to keep the question alive.
Yeah.
And what's really beautiful when you keep the question alive is that answers will come to you.
Mm.
The help that you need will come to you. It's already there.
Yeah.
So in a way, we don't need to understand anything about negative emotions.
Yeah.
We need to realize our freedom, realize that is completely free of the mind. And the self, the reality of consciousness is that freedom. And it is so.
Thank you.
Okay, Holly. Okay, well, thank you all. Very lovely to be in satsang with you.
Thank you. It's been quite beautiful.
Yeah. Okay, Ananda. See you soon. Have fun. Enjoy. Say hello to Ted.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Magdi.
Okay. Bye, Esther. Goodbye, everybody.